So what was it? Just a few days ago, you drove back home and you told me to check out that Jamie Winship video.
Yeah, I was listening to it in the car. Well, I started listening to it and I was like, oh, he's talking about money, which is interesting because the way he talks about things and the way he views life in general. And so I always love hearing people's testimonies, and I just like hearing how other people do things, because I feel like people do things differently. And, you know, we bring a certain viewpoint, and I just like hearing what else other people are
Smarter
doing.
ones than ours.
Well,
better ones.
yeah. There's always something to learn. I feel like even when you are an expert in something, you've always got more to learn. That's the thing about it, is like God has created the world and there's always more to learn about it because he is infinitely wise and smart.
Jamie is just like one of my heroes. And just, we had him on the podcast. If you haven't had a chance to listen to that podcast, this is one of our most popular podcasts.
Him and his wife
episodes.
Donna, both of them are just like
fantastic. People loved that episode so much. And so anyway, I want to play some of this and just give a little commentary on it, because I think there's some just really insightful things that he shares.
And what he says about her also was like, this is making me love her more.
Yeah.
Because one of the lies of the enemy all the time is that kind of self-hatred lie. Here's what the enemy is constantly saying to you and me: you're not enough. Like, you can dream all you want, it's not gonna happen because you're too small and you're not enough, and you're not big enough for what's out there. So just stay in your little place and just forget it. That's how he talks all the time. And you know, just being with the kids a few minutes ago and just thinking in their minds there are all these dreams and imaginations that slowly the world is gonna stomp down and trample. Like, and even we as parents contribute to it, not really knowing. You know, I can remember our kids who are now all in their 30s and married and live all over the place, and things they would say, and you're just like, I just remember we were in grad school and we were so broke.
Well, I want to stop right there. So
yeah,
the thing he said about the parents, I don't want to do it. And I know, like, with our, one of our children is just, from the moment the child was born, I don't know, let's just say he, okay? The moment he was born, just one of the sweetest kids ever.
I'm not sure which one you're talking about yet.
Like, we actually have some great kids.
I just remember we were in grad school and we were so broke and, desperately poor. And I had come, I'm going to talk about this a little bit more, but we had come, it was in the police department and super successful and all of that. And we had done well financially, and then God moves and we end up in grad school, and we had all the money to pay for grad school. We had plenty. We could go through grad school. I didn't have to work. We could pay it all. And, we just had all kinds of resources. And so, like a shrewd, wise person that I am, I got this financial advisor, and he, like, what do I do with all this money? While I'm going to spend 2 years in grad school, what am I going to do with all this money? And I don't want to.
Ha ha ha. I know where this is going.
Yeah.
And so put it all in there. I don't know. This guy's smarter than me about that kind of stuff. And this was, when was that? 87.
Famous last words. This guy's smarter than me about all that stuff.
Anyway, wow. You're like, yeah, we remember 87. Yeah, we remember that year. We do too. I remember the guy I will never forget the guy that told me to put it all right here, ever in my life. And so, 5 years of work and savings and all that stuff, retirement, vested retirement, all of it in one day. God. What? Yeah, Black Monday. Donna's reminding me. I know, I feel your pain, girl. I feel it. And so I hadn't even started school yet. We hadn't even paid tuition yet. And we're sitting there looking at our checkbook, and I don't know what it was. How much was it in there? What? Donna knows exactly. $55. $55 all of everything. We had sold a house, $55 left. And so I was so mad at God. I was so mad. And I wanted Donna to be mad with me, but she wouldn't. And she's so spiritual. And you know how these things happen, and you have to this is what people in the Bible do too, but you have to explain to God the circumstances, because he clearly doesn't seem to know what's happening. I mean, he doesn't. You're like, remember us, we left this career, this promising career, and for you, right? For you. I wouldn't have done it. Donna might, because she's more spiritual than I am, but I wouldn't. Anyway, and we had it all worked out, and we had everything. We didn't even need to really trust you, because we had it all. We had it all.
That's huge.
Well, no, and I feel like we had our moment, not down to $55, but I think it's interesting. Like, I think we had probably that moment I would describe where we got to the point where it's like, I don't need to trust God anymore. And I would have never said that. I would have never,
right.
that thought wouldn't even consciously crossed my mind. But I think the truth is that the sneaky little, I don't know, shifting of my trust from the Lord as my provider to, man, our bank accounts are pretty full right now. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. And it almost seems like, I think we talked about this before, but it's like you need to shift your trust. So your trust when you have nothing is, I need to trust God for provision in this area. And then when you have it, because I think we've gone through lots of ups and downs. That's probably a lot of people's story, is where it feels a little bit more comfortable than others at sometimes, And so it needs to shift from, Lord, I need you to provide every single thing right now, to, Lord, I need you to make sure that I don't lose my trust in you.
Yeah.
It's like, that's where your faith has to shift.
Yeah.
And I think that that's okay, because there is something different in both of those seasons, and there's something to learn and a place to grow. Like there's a room for promotion and room for growth in that switching back and forth and not getting too comfortable with one or the other.
Yeah.
And here we are. We're down here. We have 2 kids. I haven't even paid tuition yet, and we have 55. I had to keep telling God how much we had, because he $55, not 60, $55. And so I'm lamenting and all of that. And Donna says, let's just go spend it and get to 0 and see what happens.
This I love.
Because you would do that?
Because at this point, if you only have $55, it's kind of like, I mean, what's the point anyway? I love that she took it to the extreme and was like, why are we hanging on to $55? Because it's like you're trying to put your trust. It's not going to save you, but you're trying so desperately to hold on to any shred of trust in money that you can have.
Yeah.
And instead, she was like, let's get rid of it.
So this is different. I don't feel like this is exactly the same, but it does remind me of one of our particularly challenging seasons with the business when things were really tight. I think we took many months without taking a paycheck or taking a really, really small paycheck. And then in that, right in that season, I've sensed the Lord say, I want you to give, these 1 or 2 employees a raise. And
the 2 of us are like, oh, of course he does. Sure.
I'm like, seems like a great time when we're not even taking a paycheck to give our employees a raise. What I think was important about that is it allowed us to kind of do that, where it's like, all right, this is work shot. Like, business isn't providing enough, so it doesn't really matter. So like, let's just go out there and create a cool testimony.
It's like they're either all going to lose their jobs and be happy that they, you know what I mean? Like, let's go for it. They're either all going to lose their jobs and they're going to be happy that they got a raise in the meantime, or God is asking us to do something here and trust him in a way so that he can actually provide, like open a door so that he can provide. Yeah.
And just, again, adding the context here, this wasn't...
Our employees are listening to this right now being like, what?
This wasn't just this foolish thing that we ran off and did. The only reason I would have ever done this is just because we sensed the Lord leading us to it. Like, it made no sense to do. But again, when God's leading you to do it, it makes more sense than anything else.
Yeah.
So we had 0. I mean, it was a great day. We spent $55. It was an amazing day. Our kids thought, what are we rich now all of a sudden? You're just buying us all kinds of stuff. And so down to zero. And I'm thinking about Tim talking about surrender and connection, being in a community. And so those 2 years of grad school, I never worked. Neither of us worked. We paid every part of the tuition on time in cash. We ate 2 years, paid rent. And to this day, I don't know how it worked. I have no idea.
I love that. Well, and he literally just said the same thing that that I said, like, or I've said multiple times when we've told our testimony of how we paid off our house, and when we were 31. And I remember, so we turned that into, if you guys have been around, well, you heard me talk about this. So we went on Focus on the Family and shared our kind of story there, what God did and everything. And that came up. They were asking us about that. And so we shared that thing where he asked us to basically triple our giving, and then how we ended up paying off our house 9 months later, 10 months later, whatever it was.
Right.
And I turned a clip into a reel that went on Instagram. It went kind of viral, like, got
Viral for us.
way more views. I think it was like
Yeah.
250,000 views or something, like, which is not our norm, And so when that happens, you have tons of people from not in your community responding. And there were so many people responding to that statement right there, where I said, to this day, I don't know how it happened.
Right.
And so many people are like, you know exactly how it happened. You're a con artist. You're lying, blah, 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 blah. I mean, just all of the, when something goes viral, all those friendly people come out.
Right.
So, anyway, so I remember,
I would say bold people,
again,
maybe not
like,
friendly.
and I can explain pieces, and I've explained pieces that I've known, but at the end of the day, like, I still don't know how. And the same thing that he's describing, they went 2 years without any money, and yet it was all covered.
Well, and they can tell you some of the things that they know, but they're also like, I don't know why that happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
and he's going to say give a couple of examples. That's fun.
Yeah, if you ask the Israelites, how did you guys make it that whole time just on manna? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, don't you think they'd probably say the same thing?
Quail, right?
Yeah. I mean, so I guess what I'm saying is, I think there are seasons, again, normally followed by obedience, when God just does this stuff that is inexplicable. And it's like, you're like, I don't even know how to tell you. All I know is that this happened. You know what I mean? And that's a really exciting place to be in.
I was going to say, yeah. I mean, this is the adventure. This is the great adventure that Stephen Curtis Chapman was talking about. But really, it's like when you full on put your trust in God, and often circumstances are what dictate that.
Yeah.
But I think that that's actually the grace of God, that he puts us in a situation to learn that lesson.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like if we never put our kids in the situation to learn how to cook, or to learn how to, you know what I mean? To clean the toilet. When they leave the house, now they're not really, it's like, you mean you don't know how to do your laundry? And what are you going to do now? I mean, so, because it really is just like an upgrade of learning more about him and how he does things. And it brings us to a place where we can do the harder things, I think.
Yeah. No, I agree. All right, let's keep going.
And to this day, I don't know how it worked. I have no idea. And then at the end of 2 years, I got hired by the University of South Carolina. And it was like manna for 2 years. I mean, the weirdest things would happen. And so, like, our kids were little, and our oldest son, Jacob, one time he said to me, Dad, because we were just praying our guts out all the time. I mean, it was like we wouldn't have food for the day. And Donna we would just pray, and God, like, just today. And it was just, I could stand here forever and tell you the weird things that happened. Me and Donna would be standing there praying, and she would turn around, and there would be $20 hanging on our refrigerator. And we would just be like, did you notice that before? And I'm like, no. Through the day, $20. There it is. It was like manna. One time we had to pay the rent. This is even later. And we had to pay the rent, and we had zero. And it was, I don't know what, $800 or something like that. And because we lived in a house where there were mushrooms growing in the bathtub. It wasn't a great house. Our kids thought, look, we have a garden, and and we don't have to go outside. And we had to pay the rent, and we came home. We were away for the weekend. We came home, and the newspaper was on the front step. And I take it in, I just drop it on the table. And when I drop it on the table, I don't know, like a $20 bill slides out from in between the pages. And I start turning the pages of the newspaper, and there's a 20, a 10, all the way through the pages of the newspaper, $850. I know. I told Donna, this is drug money. This is clearly a drug drop, and they got the wrong house. That's what this is. I know, but I don't care.
That is a cool testimony.
That is like crazy.
That's so much more interesting than check came in the mail.
It really is. It's like just kind of ridiculous how, yeah, like he will do whatever he wants.
Like you can't make this stuff up.
You can't make it up.
Like even if you think this guy is just full of it and he's completely making it, like it's just, you can't make this stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
Truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah.
But I love that. And it's like, I don't know. I just, like he was saying, for 2 years, they're just praying and trusting God. Again, it reminds me of, famous story from what's his face from England 100 years ago or whatever with the orphans.
Oh, yeah.
Bill, what's his name?
I can't remember.
Miller.
George Mueller.
There
we
you
go. Wow.
Yeah, so his orphanage, same thing. He's sitting there running this orphanage. They have no food. And he
Right.
has the audacity and faith
I
to
know.
pray and ask God to bless the food they're about to receive.
Yeah.
And then it shows up.
It shows up. The food shows
and
up
it's
after they
just
pray.
like, oh, I just think God is so honored by that type of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And so it reminds me of the Chosen, I don't know what season that was in, where they showed, I really liked, there have been things I haven't liked how they've done that have felt weird to me. But
Right.
but like I really liked how they handled that scene with what was it, Gaius, the centurion,
And
right? Just in terms of his faith.
I'm like, which scene?
That
he was
scene with him, like where
Yeah.
he's like, you don't have to come to my house.
Right.
Like, listen, I know I've seen enough about you. I know enough about you.
Right.
You know what I mean? And Jesus is like, whoa, like you're not even part of us, man. And you
I know,
have
and
that
you get
level of
it.
faith. And so I just think God is so thrilled when we have that level, that amount of trust in him, that amount of relying on him.
Yeah.
And I think there are probably times where he's like, man, I wasn't planning on doing this, but you really believe that I'm going to. So,
Right.
okay. Like, I just feel like there's something there. And there's so many instances.
Do you think God really says, I wasn't planning on
Okay,
this?
I'm making a joke. You get the point. But like, I think if you look at the New Testament, there's so many instances where it's clear that our faith or their faith was the thing that activated it. How many times did Jesus say, your faith has made you well,
And the persistence of continuing to go back and ask and pray. And
so I get so thrilled with the audacity of faith that he's showing here.
Yeah.
Take Satan's money, absolutely, and launder it for the kingdom. That's what we were doing, I guess. But it was like that for 2 years, and when I got hired by the University of South Carolina, it all stopped. It was like manna. Manna happened until they stepped into the land, and then it stopped. And the lesson was, and you have to get this, you have to understand this. If you don't believe that God can supply all your needs, you're never going to go forward. And it can't be like, I read a book about it. It has to be like an experiential, and God's like, I'm inviting you in to something that you would never volunteer for. And we had the best time.
All right, so what do you think about that?
about him knowing we have to know him as our provider to move forward to the next thing.
Yeah.
I think that's really true. And, you can see even in the stories that he tells how the next thing that he did was not easy. It wasn't the thing that most people sign up for. It's the thing that most people walk in, or most people hear about and are like, I would never do that. How the heck did you make it out alive? Type of,
Yeah.
And I think there's something so strong in that. And I think because we talk about money, like this is how I think about it a lot. I do really believe that there is something different about understanding God as your provider in the area of money
Mm-hmm.
that opens the door to seeing it in other things.
Yeah.
Maybe because money, it can feel like security.
Yep.
And it can feel like, in a lot of different ways, of like your social status and your, if I have a problem, I know how to fix it. Or if I get sick, I know what doctor to go to,
Yeah.
like all of that. It can feel like you can lean on it so quickly. And I think having that not there
Yeah.
really makes you dependent on God. I mean, in the Western world, at least.
Yeah. I remember researching what Billy Graham said about money, and I was trying to find like what are all the things he said about money.
Mm.
And there wasn't a lot, but the one thing that really stood out to me that he said was if a person gets their heart right with money, it fixes almost everything else in their life. And I'm like, wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
It's so integrated into so much. So it's just so much bigger than so many people realize.
Yeah. And I think at this point, it's just so sneaky.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, well, my kids have to have a new pair of rain boots, but do they? Do they really? And I'm not saying that they shouldn't have rain boots. The statement is that they have to have a new pair of rain boots, that I find myself doing this kind of thing all the time, but it's just not scriptural.
How so?
You know what I
What do you
mean? It's not scriptural that we have to have a pair of shoes for every outfit. That's what I mean. Or for every occasion. I mean, there are lots of people who never have rain boots and make it around just fine. Like, it's just that. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
But in my head, I think, well, it's time to get them new rain boots. And I think it's okay to challenge that a little
To ask
bit.
those questions, yeah.
Yeah, to ask the question. Not only for the purposes of challenging, am I putting my trust in that? Like,
Mhm.
am I believing that they have to have rain boots and that there couldn't be another pair of shoes that would do the job?
So what's
Because it's so like social norm to just, we just do this.
So is that the big thing that you're seeing here? The big benefit here is defying the social norm so you don't become enslaved to that way of thinking and
Yes.
your behavior being in line with what everyone else is doing.
Right. Because we are supposed to be in the world, not of the world.
Yeah.
So in the world, that means that we have to have a physical body, right? We have to. Jesus had to have one. That's the only way it could work. He also had to wear clothes or it would have been terrible. It wouldn't have worked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there are some basic things I think that have to work for the world that we live in. But beyond that, as soon as we start believing something other than what the Bible says, that's where we need to challenge it. But the problem is I think it's so sneaky.
Yeah.
Well, I have to have something new to wear to that wedding because I just wore the same dress to that last wedding and everybody saw me.
Well, yeah, and I think it's interesting to ask, like, where did that belief come from?
Right.
And
Does
I
that
think this
belief
is
come
what you're
from
saying.
God?
That definitely
Yeah.
didn't come from the Bible. That belief came from
Right.
somehow high fashion industry over the last 30 decades
Mm-hmm.
of, go like, and we watched that one documentary where they're talking about how.
Do you mean 30 years or 30 decades?
Sorry, 30 years. And that one documentary was talking about how it used to be that once a year there was a new thing, and then it was once a season, and now it's like
It's every week.
Every week there's a new thing, and so there's within that comes the mindset, and it's been the same thing. So high fashion bleeds down to everyday fashion and
Mhm.
everyday consumers. And so that has infiltrated everyone's thinking to where if you're a woman and you wear the same dress to 3 weddings in a row, it's like you must be a hobo. Like,
Yeah.
and which is so
It's
insane,
crazy.
absolutely insane. And it's just a symptom of how ridiculously wealthy at least
Mhm.
our nation is, and how we think about things.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, and I mean,
even I think you and I have like wrestled through that enough and like talked through it enough to where it's not driving all our decisions, but it's still in there.
it's still in there. It happens all the time to me, and especially because it's something that I think is fun and I like.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one for me where I really have to check myself, but it's like this in every area. Even just like thinking about another one that for us that's important is we want to be healthy. We want to live a long time. We spend a good deal of our money on food. Like we have chosen to buy organic and, do all these, we buy the farm eggs and, we do all this stuff. But is that belief coming from because that's how we think we have to be healthy? Or can we actually trust that the blood of Jesus would cover us even if we ate less than organic foods? I mean, because not everybody can do that.
Yeah.
Not everyone has access. Not everyone,
I mean, yeah, I could go on a soapbox rant here, but
that's not what we're doing. That's not what
we're
this
not going
is.
to turn this into a health food podcast. But real quick, it is really unfortunate that organic is a special thing now, when for the history of the world that was the standard.
That's the
but
only
then,
thing, right?
Whatever.
Let's move on.
60 years ago. No, I got to say.
Well, and I mean, there's the other thing is that food is not like nice things, right? Like food or clothes are not supposed to be cheap.
Yeah.
It's just that we have gotten
we live in a
used
plastic
to
world where
everything being made
is
out
cheaper,
of plastic and being cheaper. And so I think there's so much sticker shock when, it was actually never supposed to be that way in the first place.
Yeah.
So we're all like, well, can I get it cheaper? Can I get it cheaper? It's like, you can get that
but at what cost?
shirt cheaper, but
At what cost?
you are actually
dollar amount cheaper.
You're
but there's
paying
all
a
kinds of other
company and a
costs.
slave is making your shirt. So think about it that way.
Yep.
And figure out, can you afford it? Maybe you can.
Yep. All right. I want to keep going. I hear the rest of what he has to say here.
One time Jacob said to me, our son, he came up to me, he said, because he knew we were praying through all this stuff, we were telling him all about it. And he said, I don't even remember how old he was. What was he, 4? And he said, can we go to the zoo? And a zoo is expensive, And I said, well, he said, I'm going to ask Jesus if we could go to the zoo. And you're like, oh, okay, all right, whew. And so we're like, God, please get this kid to the zoo. But we couldn't afford it. We didn't have any money. And so we were, that day, one of the guys that was in grad school, a single guy, used to hang out at our house, he comes over to our house and he said, hey, you know what? Can I just take your kids to the zoo? I just would love to take them to the zoo. And Jacob, it's like normal to him. It's like, Tom's here, he wants to take you to the zoo. And Jacob's like, of course. We asked Jesus and Tom's here. And so I couldn't teach my kids that, right? I couldn't, they had to learn it. And both of them, then he told his younger brother, we can just ask Jesus for stuff. And so they asked for bikes. Like they're immediately raising the bar. We got zoo, let's go to bike. See what happens. And somebody left bikes on our front porch. And I'm like, ask him for $1,000 right now. You got it. You're the prayer team on the family. We all have different gifts. Yours is prayer. They didn't. They wouldn't do that. They thought it was gratuitous. I like that. Like what Tim said, you cannot outgive God, and you can't out-risk God. You can't do it. You can't take a risk that's greater than what he can walk you through.
That's so good.
It is, it's a good challenge, isn't it? I love this idea of the kids getting it as kids.
Oh, getting hold of the revelation.
Yes, because, we teach this to our kids. We drive by Chick-fil-A. It is like on the way to almost everything we do, when we leave the neighborhood. And the kids, a lot. Can we go to Chick-fil-A? Let's go to Chick-fil-A today. And I'm always like, okay, listen, if I took you to Chick-fil-A every day, I could say yes to that, but then we would have to say no to a whole lot of other things. Do you want to say no to a family vacation? Do you want to say no to school? They have like a little tutorial that they go to here. Do you want to say no to a new toy?
What about water coming out of the faucet?
Yeah. Do you want to say no to electricity in our home? We can
choose. We get to make that choice.
Right. We do get to make that choice. And, once I start presenting them with that option, they're kind of like, okay, yeah, that makes sense now. But the truth is, I could buy them Chick-fil-A every day. We have enough resources to do that. We would just have to say no to other things. So in saying no to the things that they want, they get the opportunity to trust God with it instead.
Yeah.
I think we work to do that a
So
lot.
what does that look like practically? Like when you say that?
Well, so we give our kids an allowance.
We don't get an allowance. We pay them for what they earn.
Okay, whatever.
That's an important distinction.
I mean, sure. Okay, I'm sorry. I forgot. We're on a financial podcast. We have to say it the right way. They get money. They have
money.
the chance to earn money.
Yeah.
And so we don't go buy something 17 times a month because that is what they want to do. We let them go once a month. And if they do not have enough money, they don't get to buy it.
Yeah.
And so we keep going back over and over.
I've literally done this. Like I took our 6-year-old to the store and the thing he wanted was $12 and he had $9. And I mean, every ounce of me as dad, like as we kind of like had to walk past the checkout lane, like I'm like, oh, this is so hard. He's like kind of in tears, but it's like I am teaching. I think this is right. I think this is good parenting.
Yeah,
because I'm trying to teach him how important it is that we're not going to just sneak our way through this, because I think that leads to, all right, well, now I'm 18 and I don't have enough money. And so I'm just going to start doing everything on a credit card. And it's such a slippery slope. So anyway.
Well, yeah. And the other thing that we're running into with one of our children is that when this child does not get to get something and the other two siblings get something, I'm really trying hard not to throw this person under the bus, but there is a fit thrown.
Yeah.
Of why do they get something and I don't get anything? You don't love me. I mean, the whole thing is being thrown at me. And, this is, it just shows you what is in the heart of man. You know what I mean? Like this, I feel like this too. I'm laughing about it because I can relate. I've done this multiple times. And so, that is the other thing that I'm like, if I let you leave this house and you think you should have everything you want when you see it, I have really done you a disservice.
Yep.
Because not only is it going to be bad for you just in life in general, but this is not how God has called us to be. And it's not how he's called us to live.
Yeah.
And so it is hard and it's annoying and it's not fun to teach those lessons in parenting. But like, this is kind of the flip side of it is when you have nothing to give your children, when you're literally like, I have no money. I don't know what to tell you.
Yep.
We are scraping together so that we can live indoors. I don't know what to say. They get the chance to ask God for it for themselves. And I've watched my kids do it.
And exactly like Jamie's talking about.
I had a nephew that asked for a drum set and he got a drum set. And God only knows how. I mean, it was just like, I've seen this happen with kids before. And once they get a hold of that, then they know. I mean, just like he said, it's like ask him for $1,000. It's like, it's the childlike faith. But I think he wants to develop that in all of us.
Yeah, 100%.
And I love that you can't outgive God and you can't outrisk God.
Yeah.
Because, if you go back to the beginning of the story he's telling, they had what they needed to live a nice, comfortable life.
And he would have never learned those lessons.
Right. And
God stripped it away.
God
so
stripped
that
it away.
He could draw him closer and get to know him better.
Yeah.
And develop that in him. And I think that's also a really important lesson for us. If we understand that, and I'm not saying always, but sometimes like these hard things that we go through, God is trying to build something in us. He's trying to draw us closer.
They're God's mercy.
Yeah. Like it's
God's mercy. And
what if we could see some of the challenges? And again, I'm not saying everything, but some of the challenges is God's blessing to us.
Yes.
Because it's like there've been so many challenges that we've gone through where it's like I felt like I'm getting ripped off. I'm getting short end of the stick. Everybody else says it better than me, blah, blah, blah. And it's like I can go through and rehearse all this in my head. But looking back, it's like, man, look at what God did through that. And I never knew that then. But like on the other side of it, it's like I can see it now. And that was his love in him, just wanted me to know him better and experience him in new ways. And
take you to the next level. I think that's the other thing. Is like take you to the next level so that you can handle more. Because he has more for us to do.
Yeah.
Like we're not just supposed to stay where we are. There's going to be another thing after this.
Amen.
Yeah. Which he talks about. I listened to this whole message. You haven't listened to the whole thing yet. And we should put a link to it so
Yeah,
people
we'll have a
can
link to this in the description if you
listen
want
to
to
it.
check it
'Cause
out.
I mean, he doesn't continue talking about finances. He talks about other things. But it's just like God is trying to do a whole lot of things at one time. And I think whenever I saw things go bad, I wasn't connecting the dots that because we as humanity have let the enemy come in and wreck the beautiful creation that God set up, doesn't mean that God is sitting up there going, yeah, I'm gonna smite them with, you know, with poverty.
Yeah.
Part of this was his problem. He listened to the wrong guy. He, made the wrong move. He didn't have enough information or, whatever. But at the same time, he was trying to seek out wisdom and counsel and went to the wrong person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like, it is kind of his fault, but it's also not really his fault, which I think happens to a lot of people. Like, it's kind of my fault, but also not kind of my fault, And so we can see that as like what he was saying. I got mad at God and I was like, you took this away from me. And it's like, well, yes. Or maybe, but you kind of made some bad choices there. And the Bible says that he works all things out for our good.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's like he has taken the worst situation, which is a fallen world, a fallen people. Like, none of us are getting it right. It says that over and over in the Bible about how we're just getting everything wrong. And yet he still promises that he's going to work it out for our benefit.
Yeah.
And I think the more we can walk through really difficult circumstances and look for him in everything, how are you working this? What do you want? What are you wanting me to learn? Humble ourselves enough to know that we don't have the full picture figured out. Then I think it actually makes it a lot easier, and we get out knowing God in a new way and able to effectively minister the gospel in a new way that we were never able to do it before because we had disqualified ourselves just by having sin,
Yeah.
This is what Kesha had to say about our book, Simple Money, Rich Life.
First and foremost, Simple Money, Rich Life. Y'all know that I've been reading this book, and hands down, I would go as far as saying this is probably one of the most monumental books in my life.
And did you know that you can get a copy for free?
You can get it on Amazon, but we so believe that the church needs this message that if you can cover shipping, we'd love to cover the cost of the book and send you a free copy.
All you need to do is go to seedtime.com/free to get yours.